I am so excited about this season that we're finding ourselves in. And before church, I was talking with Steve, and we were sitting there talking, and we said, man, we want to give you guys some updates on what's going on in the building. And so we said, well, let's show them some pictures about how things are progressing. And we realized there's a few things that have been done within the past 2 days that we didn't have pictures of. So Steve drove to the building this morning and snapped some more pictures so that we could update you all. So give a round of applause for Steve. And if he's late to church today, we'll excuse that. I guess this is a good reason. So this is what's happening. We have this sign up, the future home of Icon Church. Again, this building is at 400 Old Post Road in Kyle. This is a picture of the foyer. Floors are currently being prepped right now for flooring to go in there. We're just going to cycle through. This area is not a conference room. This will be the future coffee shop of Icon Church. You can see it down below. This is kind of from up above. There's a kind of second floor to part of the building. So this is looking out one of the windows. That was the front entrance. This is the main sanctuary space. So this is where you guys will all be sitting. So you can begin to call your places right now, like that chair, that slab of concrete, I guess. This is kind of standing at the doors looking out into the lobby. This will kind of be a seating area that we'll have. We'll have some couches and love seats set out so you can enjoy your coffee. Let's see what else we have. This, for you audiophiles, this is our sound system that was just installed this week. And I'm telling you, this thing is amazing. So we will not be pushing it to its capacity because we would probably be deaf. If you've noticed, if you've driven by recently, you've seen kind of the parking lot blocked off. That's because they've been busy sealing, putting a brand new seal coat on the parking lot, so it looks really good. They just put new stripes and fire lanes in there, so it's looking great. Do we have anything else? Let's see. Oh, this is the stage that's being built right now. Really excited. This is being built from scratch. It's looking really good. And Benji and the worship team was excited because we got to decide and put like power boxes and XLR ports, and they got to build the stage exactly how they wanted, so they're excited about that. There's a construction team. If you're on the construction team, raise your hand real quick. Let's give a round of applause for our construction team. They are killing it. They are not building the building, don't worry. They're doing kind of like side projects. If some of you saw like Austin and John and some of the guys raise their hand, you're like, are they building that building? No. They're coming alongside and doing side projects. One of those was the sound panels that will go in the back of the sanctuary. They're working on that. We're working on that yesterday. These are the offices upstairs, and I believe that we may have just one more, and there's kind of a final picture of the building with the stripes and everything. So, man, so excited about what's happening. And last week, if you were here, I referenced there could be a chance that we could get in next Sunday. It is not looking that way. Flooring is going to take a little bit longer. So here's what I need you to do. If you want to stay updated on the building, because here's where we've kind of been a little perplexed, is if we find out we get the building on a Friday and we can announce it on Sunday, hey, next week we're going to be in the building, we're going to do that. But if we find out, say, on Monday or Tuesday, we're going to have to make this call. Do we just kind of mass communicate on social media and Facebook and send out email blasts and that sort of thing to let people know? Or do we wait a whole Sunday to go by to announce it here? So I want to get in this building as soon as possible. How many guys want to get in the building as soon as possible? Yes, me too. So here's what we need, because also when we get in the building, we don't have to pay rent here. So there's lots of reasons why we want to get in there. So here's what I need you to do. If you're not following us on social media, follow us. There's not a whole lot of icon churches, so just any social platform, look us up there. We're likely there. Also, if you don't get emails from us, go ahead and on a connection card, write your name and email address and drop that at the info center and get in that mailing list, so that way you can find out right away, hey, this Sunday we're going to be in the building. So we want to let you guys know. And also, here's the other thing. I want to just touch on something that Brooke and Tyler said. We still have funds coming in. So if you see all this and you think, oh man, the capital campaign's going awesome, everything's done, I can kind of sit back and enjoy. Oh no, everything is not quite finished yet. In fact, because of some code issues, not issues, but how permitting works and building plans and that sort of thing, the coffee shop won't be done on day one, but we will have coffee there. Certain areas won't be built out yet because they have to be put on a new set of plans. All of those things cost money. In fact, we had to make a decision this week about the lighting system. We'd really like to install a lighting system in there so it's not just kind of off and on gym lights the switch is in the hallway that any kid can flip. So it's not a win, if we're in service and, some kid walks by and goes, I'm going to flip those off. And then it's just dark. So we don't want that. Ideally, we'd like a better system in there. But this week, we had to decide. We looked at what was in the account and how much that cost. And we said, you know what? We're not going to be able to do this right now. It is something in the plans. But if you have made a commitment to For Our City, we still need about $50,000. About a month ago, we said we needed 80. Praise God, you guys have stepped up to the plate, and 30,000 have come in over these past few weeks. So give yourselves a round of applause. So we're still on our way. So I want to encourage you guys, we still need that. So if you've made that commitment, just to remember to keep that in mind. If you didn't make a commitment and you'd like to step in, you can do that, absolutely. We'd love to have you a part of this. So we're so excited about this, and we're so excited about this series too, Church in the Wild. This is really kind of at the core of what's happening to us again as a church, and it's this exciting time. When I think about this series, it kind of brings me back to the early days of starting the church and kind of meeting together with what we called the launch team, because that's pretty much the only thing we could think of. And it was this group of people that said, let's move to this place and let's start this church from scratch. And it was this sort of thing where everyone was on board, and we would have these planning meetings, and we'd say, hey, whoever can show up, just meet me in my living room Monday at noon, and people just kind of show up from the launch team. We would say, hey, we're doing this, after school program, this kids program. Who can do this activity? Who can do this game? And that was the team that just did all of it. And it was this exciting time because it was a season that we were saying yes to things, that we were advancing, and that we were playing offense. And that's really what this idea of the church in the wild is all about. If you look at church from a historical context, when church least thrived, when churches and communities shrank back, when they became less relevant to the community, were times that they put their walls up and they became an end unto themselves. They became this Christian subculture that they existed for their own good. They played defense. Oh, we got to fight against, that bad, nasty culture. And they became more and more irrelevant. And when the church most succeeded, when the church grew the fastest, is when they played offense, when they went into the community, when there was a time that the plague was sweeping through Europe and it was the Christians that went into it to serve and to love people, the church exploded. When the church plays offense, the church grows. And we as Icon Church are going into a time that we've got to play offense. We can't sit back any longer. We can't just say, we're just going to let church be normal. We have to go forward. We have to step forward. And what's interesting is when we're going into the season that as a church startup that's just, as far as having services go, we're just 3 years old. In fact, I met with a group of pastors just a couple days ago. It was incredible. Pastors that I'm close friends with here in this city. They came to the building and I walked them through and they prayed for you. They prayed for us as a church and they celebrated what God is doing. And isn't it cool to be in a community that churches, that other churches come together and say, we support you, we're praying for you, we want to help you. Isn't that incredible that we live in a community like that? I was so thrilled. And what was so cool is when we began to talk about it, and I've been asked questions about you guys, about us as a church. And they've said things like, what's made the difference? When there's been a lot of churches that have come to this area and started up and fizzled out. When there's been times that, it takes a long time for a church to get traction. Why is it that in the short period of time, you guys are turning this kind of major corner? You're getting opportunities like this building. And I had to sit back and I had to think, what has been different about you? What has been different about us as a church? What is one unique thing that has kind of made the difference for us? And I keep coming back to this idea is that we say yes to things that scare us. Like, this is one of the reasons why I love this church. This is one of the reasons that I love getting to play the small role that I do, that I get to be a part of this. I don't look at this as like, this is my thing and you guys come on. No, like, we're in this together. And the reason we've had the kind of impact in Hays County in such a short time is because we've said yes to things that scare us. We just keep coming back and we keep saying yes. When something scares us and we want to kind of step back and be afraid, that we say, you know what, God, if this is you, I'm going to step out there and I want to do something about it. So here's what I want to do. I want to ask you guys some questions. And I want us to think, I want to make this personal because we can talk organizationally, we can talk structurally, we can talk about us as a church, but I want to talk about us as individuals. So let me ask you, when was the last time you personally that you said yes to something that really scared you? I want you to think, I want you to analyze, kind of think about this in your life. Maybe it's in your business, maybe it's relationally. When was the last time that you really felt God directing you to do something specific? When was the last time you felt like maybe you were in the grocery store and you felt someone, this kind of voice in your head saying, pay for the groceries for the person behind you? You thought, oh man, that's crazy. They're going to think I'm a creeper. They're going to think, and you go through all those reasons why you shouldn't or why you won't. When was the last time that you really felt like God was asking you to do something? Or when was the last time that you tried something that you had to rely on God's help to accomplish it? You said, God, if you don't show up, I'm going to fall flat on my face. When was the last time that you had to do something that scared you so much? Or the last time that you felt stretched by something that God was asking you to do? You see, we can talk about business and we can talk about relationships and we can talk about our families, but I want to take this a step deeper. I want us to think about our faith, our relationship with God. When was the last time you felt those things? That God was leading you to do something and it scared you and it challenged you and it stretched you. So, I don't know. You heard Talitha talk about that. When was the last time you felt yourself personally at a place like that? See, what I'm trying to get at, what I'm trying to gauge is this kind of bigger question, is how much offense are you playing with your faith? You see, because we can say, as a church, we need to play offense, and we can all clap and cheer and woo, let's go get it. But what that means is you need to play offense. Because the church isn't a name. The church isn't Dan. Dan needs to go play offense. No, the church is us. It's you. So when we cheer for, we as a church, we need to take risks. We need to say yes to things that scare us. We need to go out there and get it. What you're saying is, I need to take risks. Yeah, I need to do things that scare me. Yeah, I need to do things that stretch my faith, that if God doesn't show up, I'm going to fall flat on my face. I need to do that. So my question is how much offense are you really playing? See, there's this letter that a guy who planted all these churches, and he was writing this letter to this one church, and he talked about this concept. He called it the armor of God. And if you're in church world, maybe you're familiar with it. Maybe you had, if you're like me and you grew up in church, you had like this flannel board at one time, and like the teacher put up like flannel graph. Anybody know what I'm talking about? If you don't know what I'm talking about, trust me, you missed nothing. But they talk about this armor of God, and it was these attributes and these qualities of life, of a Christian life, and your walk with Jesus. And what's unique is you look at all these different things, and nowhere in the armor of God, nowhere in this explanation of things that are to protect us and to help us accomplish His mission are things that are supposed to cover our back. And the reason for that is our faith is never to be played on defense, running away from something. See, we're protected in the front when we're playing offense, not running from it, playing defense. So I've got some potential good news, some potential bad news for you. If you're a guest here, if you're just checking this thing out, if you're not even sure about this whole God thing and Jesus, and you're like, I'm kind of checking this out, then today you get to sit and listen. You get like this snapshot of what it means to be a part of Icon Church, what it means to be a follower of Jesus, and you just get to kind of listen in. And that's so awesome, and I'm so glad. But we're going to have some church time here. We're going to talk as the church, Icon, us together on this mission. If you're in this room and you're a regular here, you would say, Icon Church is my home church. I am Icon Church. If that's you, then today is for you. There's going to be some personal application. So easy for me to say. There's going to be some application for you personally. There will be. But then there's going to be some corporate application for your role here in Icon, why you're here, and what I believe God wants you to do here. So, again, if you're a guest, you get to sit and listen, and that's great. If you're a regular, we're going to have some church. Okay, you guys okay with that? Is that good? All right, so here's the deal. I've got a special announcement. If you are Icon Church, if you're a regular here, if this is your home church, I've got an announcement for you. You're the new launch team, right? Yeah. right? That's right. You are the new launch team. So here's what happened. Early on, we had this group of crazy, probably half stupid people that came together that said, we believe God can do something great, and we're all chips in. Like, we're it. Here's how it kind of worked. You know who the setup teardown team was? It was the launch team. You know who the light team was? The launch team. Who set out coffee and donuts? Who bought the coffee and donuts? You guys are picking up on this. The after-school program, that we need volunteers to run this after-school program. The launch team. You know why? Because that's all there was. Like, it wasn't like these options of like, who can do this? Who's called to do this? Who's best at this? It's like, no, this just has to get done. So we just do it. Like, I hitched up and unhitched the trailer because guess what? I was on the launch team. And that's just how it worked. So we're going into this new season. And we talked about this building and how exciting it was. And again, what's a building? A building's just a tool. That's all it is. It doesn't mean we've arrived. It doesn't mean that now we're a real church, though some people see it that way. It's just a tool. But you know what we're going to do with this tool? We are going to leverage it every second we have it. We're going to do everything we can to leverage that to reach more people so that more people can experience what you've experienced, so that more people in this county, in our communities can be changed the way that we've already seen so far. So we're going to leverage this. So you know what? You're the new launch team. You are Church in the Wild, because it's not Dan, and it's not the staff, and it's not even the elders or the trustees. It's not the board. It's you. You're a part of the launch team. It's your challenge to step out and to play offense. So I've got this question. This kind of made me think of some things. As you know, we're going into this series, kind of Church in the Wild. There's this question when we think about big things. We think about taking risks. We think about stepping out in faith and trying something new and doing. There's this question that we kind of ask ourselves. And really, this is, I believe, a core human question, even in business, in relationships, in raising children, and you get the new job. There's this question that we ask ourselves, that we kind of come back to. And it's this question, it's, do I have what it takes? I mean, do I really have what it takes to do that, to accomplish that thing? Whatever it has, whatever it is, whatever it asks of me, do I have that? And that's a really normal question. That's a question I asked myself when I thought about moving here and starting a church. Do I have what it takes? I mean, really, am I capable of this? And what happens when you ask yourself this question, you kind of go through these like different qualifications. And first you might go to your credentials. Okay, what do I have to kind of attach to my name? And for me, when I did that and I kind of thought about starting a church, I said, okay, what are my credentials? You know, I don't have like a doctorate in theology. I'm sorry, if you came here because I have a doctorate in theology, you came for the wrong reasons, okay? Like I don't have that. In fact, I don't have, there's this like fancy degree, your MDiv, your master's in divinity. It's like a fancy, I don't even have that. Okay, so I thought and I said, do I have what it takes? And honestly, I didn't go through a traditional school. I don't even have a traditional associate's degree. So that question of do I have what it takes to my credentials, you know, I would look at that and go, nope, not at all. So then what's the next thing you go to? The next thing you go to is usually experience. Well, maybe I don't have all the credentials, but I've got all this lifetime experience of X, Y, Z. I mean, when you get a job, it might require a certain level of degree or this certain amount of experience. If you have this degree or 5 years experience, you know, one of those sorts of things, and you go, okay, so do I have that? And for me, as I looked at my church planting experience, my experience of being a lead pastor, I came up pretty short yet again, you know, and for you, you might sit there and you go, okay, this thing that I'm being challenged to do, whether it's in business or in life or in this church, Dan's asking me to be launch team. I don't have this Bible degree. I don't even have a whole lot of experience. And then we might get to this third category called passion. And passion can make up for a lot. Passion can make up for a lot of lack of credentials. It can even make up for some lack of experience if you're passionate about it. But sometimes you might not even have a whole lot of that. Like maybe in environments you can get excited about it, like this, and you go, yeah, like I'm ready. And then Monday comes, and it's Monday. So like the passion wanes a little bit. You don't have like Benji standing next to your bed like, all things are, you don't have that? If you ask him, he might. I don't know. Like, he might be. Daniel just volunteered. Like, he's game. He will show up at your house and sing to you. Little creepy. A little creepier that you volunteered. But here's the thing. You don't have that, right? Like, Monday comes and it just feels like a Monday. And that passion fades. So the question is, like, what do you do when you realize I'm not qualified? I'm not qualified to start that church. I'm not qualified to be a leader in that church. I'm not qualified to be on the launch team. I'm not qualified to do great things for God. What do you do then? Because if I were to expect all of you to be qualified before you step out, I'd be a hypocrite. Because a lot of people would have looked at me and said, Dan, you're not qualified to do that. But God's told me to, and it was scary, and I said yes. And in the same way, I'm asking you to do that. So what do you do when you're not qualified? Well, I've got some good news first and foremost. The first thing I want to tell you is if you're unqualified, you're in good company. If you're unqualified, you're in good company. And you might just think I'm talking about, myself like I was earlier, but I want you to get this. I read this on the internet, and I just want to read this for you, because this is a collection of different people throughout the text, throughout the scriptures, throughout what we know as the Bible, these letters and accounts of different people that did amazing things for God. And I just want us to realize how unqualified some of these people were. And if you grew up in church, man, a lot of these names and these stories and the things they did, you might go, oh, wow, they did do that, and they also did this, and that wasn't real glamorous. Or if you're not kind of from a church background, you hear these names and you're like, I have no clue what these people did. I'm reading this to say, these people, you can read about the stories and real accounts of things that happened in their lives and how God used them greatly, even though they were greatly unqualified. Noah was a drunk. Abraham was too old. Isaac was a daydreamer. Jacob was a liar. Leah wasn't good looking. Joseph was abused. Moses had a stuttering problem. Gideon was afraid. Samson was a womanizer. Rahab was a prostitute. Jeremiah and Timothy were too young. David had an affair and was a murderer. Elijah was suicidal. Isaiah preached naked. I've done a lot of things in my life. I've made a lot of mistakes in ministry. I've never done that, and hope to never do that. So you've got nothing to worry about, but we'll just continue on. Jonah ran from God. Naomi was a widow. Job went bankrupt. John the Baptist ate bugs. Another thing I'd rather not do. Peter denied Christ. The disciples fell asleep while praying. Martha worried about everything. The Samaritan woman was divorced more than once. Zacchaeus was too small. Timothy had an ulcer, and Lazarus was dead. I don't know what your excuse is, but you're probably not dead. So if God can do great things through these people, if God can use people that are highly unqualified, guess what? You're in good company. If you say, I'm unqualified, you're in good company, and God can still use you. He wants to use you. And in fact, I want to look at someone today that we actually might look at from one perspective and say how qualified they were. Probably somebody in the New Testament, someone in the early church that's probably more qualified than almost anyone else. This person was a Jewish person of the tribe of Benjamin. It was this kind of, he trained under one of the most prestigious rabbis, this guy named Gamaliel. He was highly trained. He was a Roman citizen. He was one of the best of the best. You would look at him from some perspectives and say, this guy is the most qualified person, a guy by the name of Paul. And Paul, what Paul did is when he had this radical conversion experience with Jesus, his whole life changed. And he went around and he kept starting these churches. And he'd travel around and he'd start a church here, and he'd go somewhere else and he'd start a church there, and he'd go somewhere else and he'd start a church, and then he'd write a letter back to this church reminding them of things, and then he'd write a letter to this church, and he went around and you'd do that. And you would think that this guy, of anyone, he's responsible for writing more of the New Testament than anyone else. This guy is someone who doesn't have to defend his qualifications. Like this guy, I don't know, could point to, yeah, I wrote almost half the New Testament. How about that, right? Like I planted all these churches. I did all these things. You would look at him and go, man, this guy, he's qualified. But something happened that's unbelievable. He started this church in Corinth. And then he went around and he traveled and he was writing them letters. And there's people that came after he started it. There's people there from the beginning. And he wrote this letter and they started saying things about Paul and he had to address them. And it's so crazy. I want you to look at what was said about Paul at a church that he started. It's found in the book of 2 Corinthians. Let's look at this letter. This is Paul talking. He says, some say his, being Paul's letters are weighty and forceful. But in person, he's unimpressive, and his speaking amounts to nothing. Now, I'm just going to be real honest. I know that like some of you guys prefer when Kelly speaks. Some of you guys prefer when Steve speaks. When we have a guest speaker, you're like, Dan's not there. Yes, okay. So I get it. Like, there's different preferences. But if you came to me and said, Dan, yeah, thank you so much for planting this church. Thank you for moving down here and doing this. But really, like when I see you in person, you're pretty unimpressive and your speaking amounts to nothing. I'd need a prescription or two. Like that would be something that would lend itself to some depression in my life, right? Like that's a pretty harsh saying. And in fact, there's these other references in these letters that are being written. There's this other preacher and he goes around and his name's Apollos. And people are talking about Apollos. Like when he speaks, it's amazing. I mean, it's like, did you guys listen to that podcast of Apollos? Man, he killed it. You know, they're going around, they're talking about Apollos and he speaks so well and all these great things. And then Paul shows up and they're like, Paul, like your letters are real. Author, awesome. Great author. Speaker, yeah, it really doesn't amount to much. In fact, you're not that great and you're really pretty unimpressive. And in this way, Paul would look, and Paul would be unqualified to be a speaker. In fact, if we really take Paul at his word, coming up here, if he was to speak at Icon, we wouldn't really be all that impressed with his speaking ability. We'd go, it's cool that there's a dead guy speaking. Like, I mean, I guess that'd be really weird. But we'd be impressed that it's Paul, but like his speaking ability wouldn't be that impressive. And that's what happened at one of these churches that he spoke at. So what we have to realize is we have to look at this and go, well, why is that? And how does that work? And it's really at the core of this question of, am I qualified? And realizing, okay, I'm probably not qualified for a lot. So the question isn't, does God use broken people? But the question is rather, how? How does God use broken people? Because you know what? I'm broken. Like I'm not qualified. And I would venture to say, if I'm challenging you to be a part of the launch team, again, if you're regular here at Icon, we're going to ask a lot. And I'm asking you to be a part of the launch team in this new season. You might go, well, Dan, I'm not qualified. I'm messed up. My family's messed up. My wife's really messed up. You know, whatever it is that you say you're not qualified, I want to tell you, God uses broken people. So I would hope we don't have to qualify after reading that list of people, after taking a quick look at Paul. It's not a question of like, does he use broken people? Does he want to use you? The question is, how does God want to use you? And what I love about this illustration with Paul is that what do we know Paul for? Do we know Paul for his like great sermons that he spoke? Do we know Paul from that YouTube clip? Do we know Paul from his great ability to speak in front of people? No, why do we know Paul? Why do we even know his name? Because of the letters he wrote, right? It's the letters that he wrote that made him famous. Outside of people that are really familiar with the Bible, if we just went up and asked the average person about Apollos, they'd have no clue who he was. You see, he spoke great sermons and then just kind of disappeared into antiquity. But Paul wrote these letters. In fact, we know Paul because of Paul's weakness. It was Paul's weakness. What if the reason Paul wrote all these letters is because he knew he wasn't a good communicator? He knew if I show up at Corinth and I try to talk to them and address this issue with them, it's not going to get anywhere. But my writing ability, I'm able to write these letters that are weighty and forceful. See, we know Paul because of his weakness. It's that very thing. What if the very thing that you think makes you unqualified is the thing that God wants to use to do something great? You say, well, I don't know a whole lot. I don't know a lot about the Bible, and it drives you to learn more. Well, I'm not qualified. I don't have a whole lot of natural ability, so you have to work that much harder. You see, it's the very thing that you think, I'm unqualified, I can't do it, that what if God wanted to use that thing about you to do something great for his kingdom? And just like Paul, man, from a speaking ability, unqualified, but it was that very thing that allowed him to be used so greatly in the kingdom of God that to this day, thousands of years later, we're talking about the things he wrote. It was his weakness that made him great. See, what you see as a handicap, God sees as an opportunity. You look at it and you say, I'm handicapped in that way. I can't do anything great for God because of my past. See, I did some really stupid things when I was younger, and those things are going to handicap me forever. What if God says, no, I want to use that story for someone else who's going through the same thing? You see it as a handicap. God sees it as an opportunity. See, there's this great story, and how many of you guys, and you may get kicked out of church if you answer this wrong. How many of you guys have heard of Rudy? You guys know Rudy, okay? There better be more cheering for Rudy than that, okay? We know Rudy, right? Like Rudy of Notre Dame fame, right? Like my wife and I are crazy Notre Dame fans. And Rudy is one of the greatest movies of all time. I know as a pastor, I'm supposed to say The Passion of the Christ, but Rudy is... If you don't like Rudy, you may not have a soul, okay? So one of my favorite movies of all time. In fact, one of the people here at Icon Church was at a sports memorabilia thing, and they found this Notre Dame poster, and it says, play like a champion today, and the thing that they smack as they go out there, and it's signed by Rudy. My wife's going to bring it up real quick. Go ahead and real quick. Everybody give Kelly a round of applause. See, this is the... They have this like framed and hung up in their stairwell, and it says, play like a champion today, and then at the bottom is signed by, you know who? You're right. Yes, it is signed by Rudy, people. So this person forever got on my good list, so they're going to heaven for sure. They bought that for me at a sports memorabilia thing. I don't know if that's how it works, but I'm going to hope it is. So anyway, they got that for me, and I love Rudy. But what made Rudy so great? Was it because he was super talented? Was it because he was this like huge defensive end? No, in fact, it was those things that made his story so great. His handicap is what made him great. See, it wouldn't be a great story if he had all this talent, all this ability, and he just walked out there and did great things. Well, we wouldn't cheer for him like we do if he had all those things going for him. Your handicap can be the very thing that God uses as an opportunity. I've got good news, that God doesn't God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. You might go like, well, what do you mean by like called? You know what? He qualifies those that just simply say yes. That's who God qualifies. So you don't have to go, well, I'm qualified first. No. If you just simply say yes, God will do the qualifying. God will take care of the rest. You have to be willing to step up and say yes. You might be sitting there and you go, okay, so what does this mean for me in my life? See, I think there's application for this for all of us. That sometimes we just have to step up and we have to say yes. And we have to do things that scare us. And I think that's just a universal truth. That if you're in this room and you are just checking out God, and you're just checking out this church thing, and you're unsure, I just want to challenge you. Say yes to some things that scare you. Just try it and see what happens. You see, I think this is a universal truth that good things happen there. But I would go further than that and say there's some application right here for Icon Church. I told you there'd be like life application, and that's great. But there's like tomorrow application. Life application for you and your role in Icon Church. So again, if you're a regular, this is for you. If you're not a part of this church, you can kind of sit back and go, oh man, these suckers, they have to do all this stuff. No, listen, if you're on the launch team, here's what I'm talking about today. We need you to be a part of one of the most vital parts of this church. One of the things that I think is probably as important, if not more important than anything else we do, is small groups. You might look at that and you go, well, that's really like not super fun and fancy and like, woo, small group. Like I get it. Like there wasn't like this, just huge round of applause when I said small groups. But we believe a few things about small groups. One, we believe that circles are actually better than rows. You see, rows are great, circles are better. It's important to be inspired and to be challenged, and that happens in rows. But do you know where life change happens? Life change happens in circles. Because you know what you don't often get to do here on the Sunday morning is like talk back to me and like respond to things I say. It'd be weird. We could try it sometime. But if you're like, well, what do you mean by that? Okay, I guess we can answer that one. So we really don't do that here. I get it. But in a small group, in a circle, you can do that. And Dan said this, and what do you think he means by that? How do you apply that to your life? What do you think about that? And you can discuss it. You see, circles are better than rows. Another thing that we say is that life is actually better when you live it together. When you live in community, life is better. You know why? Because for me, when we moved into our home and we had to paint our whole home, I am not good at painting, and I really don't like it. And I've got 4 really crazy kids, and my wife and I would have painted our house forever. But you know what happened? My small group said, you know what, we want to help you paint your house. And they came over and they helped us paint. And when a small group is in need, there's been other times that people in our small group, I don't know what's going on with our small group, but lots of people move and lots of people have babies. So if you want to move or have a baby, come on to our small group. But when someone has a child, you know what happens in our small group? Is people say, hey, I'll cook you a meal. And then I'll take Tuesday, and I'll cover Wednesday, and I'll cover Thursday. So this new family with this new child, they don't have to worry about things like that. That's why life is better when you live it together. It's community. You know what this is right here happening? This is great. This is inspiration. I hope this challenges you, but this isn't community. We want community for every single one of you, for every person a part of Icon Church. And as we go into this new season, guess what? New people are going to start showing up. We want community for them too. So you might think this is a pitch to like get you into a small group and to join a small group. And if that's what you think I'm doing, trying to get you like into a small group, oh, that's sweet. That's cute. Because what I really try and get you to do is I want you to lead a small group. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right, suckers. No. Here's the thing. Again, if you're a part of the launch team, remember? Guess what? We need new small groups. So guess who ran all the small groups early on? The launch team did. We ran the small. So guess what? You're a part of the launch team. So you know what that means? We need you to lead a small group. I have challenged Talitha Pearson. In fact, raise your hand, Talitha. She was up here doing the offering. She's awesome. She oversees all of our small groups. And I told Talitha, even though she was pregnant and with an 18-month-old, I'm a real nice guy. I challenged her. I said, Talitha, I want you to try to triple the amount of small groups we have. And she hit me in the face. No, she didn't. But she stepped up. She probably wanted to. But she said, okay, we can do this. You know why? Because she believes in you. Because she believes in this church, because she's talked to you and she's seen you and she knows that you're capable. That if you'll say yes to something that might scare you, that God will do the qualifying. You say, I don't know how to lead a small group. You know what? It's easy. Like, I don't know. It kind of intimidates me. You know what? You might go to some of those excuses. You say, I'm not great at meeting a whole lot of new people. You know what? That trait in you that you think unqualifies you might be the thing that makes your small group maybe the deepest, closest, most connected small group we have. Maybe you say, well, I don't know a whole lot about the Bible. I can't teach a whole lot. You know what? Great. Then maybe you probably have the best questions of anybody. And you can lead the best kind of discussion because you can ask good questions. The thing that you think unqualifies you may be the very thing that God uses in you. Man, I've got a crazy story. I just became a Christian. Awesome. You know, because I bet your story can challenge someone that's been a Christian for 20, 30 years to get off the sidelines, to get off the bench, and to get into the game. See, the thing that you think unqualifies you is the very thing God wants to use to do something great. You see, you may think that leading a small group is scary, is hard. It's so simple. Can you have people over to your home? Can you shake their hands and welcome them? Can you eat with them? I can eat. That's one thing I am absolutely qualified to do. I can eat with the best of them. Can you eat a meal together with them? And then if we provided questions, if we said, here are the questions we want you to ask, 3, 4, maybe 5 questions, you just ask those questions to a group of people and you just talk. Can you do that? Then you can lead a small group. We want to make it so easy. And we're even going further than that. Talitha, myself, we're going to make ourselves available. There's going to be trainings and opportunities that we even help you with that. Leading a small group is so easy. You see, listen, at the end of the day, you might think, "Oh, I don't know, like this is scary. I don't know if I can do this." I'm going to challenge you to step up, to lead a small group, to at least say, I'm interested, I'll take the next step. You see, I think that leading a small group might be the thing that changes you more than anyone else in that group. I can attest in my life, leading a small group has been something that has changed me more than I think it's changed people that were in my small group. You see, I believe that he'll do a work in you because you allow him to do a work through you. If you make yourself available, if you say, God, I'll allow you to do a work through me, I believe he's going to do a greater work in you because of that. If you just make yourself available. What has made us, in some of the eyes of different people that have looked at us, what has made us successful is, what do we say? We say yes to things that scare us. I want to ask every single person in this room, would you consider leading a small group? You might say, man, tripling our small groups, why do we really need to do that? We need to do that, one, to get some of you into a small group. And two, there's going to be a lot of people that show up. And what do we want to communicate? We want to communicate that this isn't the big deal of church. The big deal of church happens on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday. That's where your life happens. And that's where we want to encourage people to become a part of community, a part of something bigger. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask every single one of you. And you might think that you're off the hook because you're in a small group. This is an aside. If you think like, whew, like I'm already in a small group, that's awesome. Oh, no. I'm so sorry. We want some of you that are in small groups to multiply small groups or to pull out and say, you know what, I'm going to lead my own small group. So you may be a part of a small group, but I want you to lead a small group. I want you to step out and to lead your own small group. So here's what I want you to do. I want everyone to grab the communication card that you all received when you came in. Go ahead, and once you got it, get it in your hand, kind of wave it at me a little bit. I want to make sure you guys all got them. Okay, all right. Now that you have it in your hand, here's what I want you to do. If you are not a small group leader and you're interested in just hearing us out, this isn't like you're committing, you're signing your life away. You're like, Talitha's going to stalk you. She may still do that, but this isn't like you agreeing to lead a small group. This is just you saying, I'm willing to hear a little bit more. I'm willing to say a kind of an initial yes to something that scares me. I'll hear a little bit more. I'll find out. I'm not committing to leading a small group, but I'll come to an informational meeting. I'll let Talitha talk to me about what it's going to look like on a practical standpoint. Well, is once a week? Do I have to do it once a week? Can I do every other? And answer all those specific questions. For you, maybe you even would be willing to lead a small group, but your home isn't conducive. Your apartment may not be conducive for a group. Still write your name down. There's opportunity. Some people say, hey, listen, I have a great home for it if someone wants to come and host it and kind of lead it. So again, if you're willing to hear anything more about leading a small group, I want you to write your name, your phone number, and your email on that communication card, and just maybe write small group or SG or groups or anything, just to kind of denote that this is about small groups. So as you all are writing on that communication card, because you're saying yes to something that scares you, as you do that, what we're going to do is I'm going to pray, and we're going to dismiss. On your way out, there's going to be host teams with little buckets. You just drop that communication card in the bucket, and what you're agreeing to is just hearing us out. Just hearing the vision about why small groups are so important, what that could look like moving forward, and really what it means to be a small group leader. So it's, again, you're not committing to it, but you're just agreeing, hey, I'm willing to say the first yes and take the first step. So as you write your name and your contact information on that card, again, drop it with the host teams on your way out. And again, just another reminder, stay up on social media. Make sure that you're on the email database. You can sign up on our website, iconchurch.com, to get information to find out when we're getting into the building. So thank you guys so much. I'm so glad that you guys were here with us this morning. Let me pray, and then we'll just dismiss. God, I thank you so much. I thank you for this group of people. God, I thank you for Icon Church. Lord, I thank you for a group of people that say yes to things that scare them. God, I thank you that there are people in this room that feel very unqualified, that are writing their names down, even a little bit hesitantly, God, because they're saying yes to something that might scare them. God, I pray that you would do a work in people as they allow you to do a work through them. God, I pray that the people in this room would feel community, not because they sit in a row, but because they sit in a circle. God, I pray for all the countless people that we don't even know their names yet, that are going to come and hear about you because of this tool that you've given us. Lord, I pray that we would be good stewards of that tool. Lord, the last thing we want to do is get a lot of people in a door to sit in rows and not find community and not find you. God, may we be good stewards of that gift you're giving us, and may we use it well. God, I thank you so much for all that you do. And I thank you for speaking to us today. Lord, we pray these things in your name. Everybody said, amen.